All right. Welcome back to the podcast. I got my buddy Ivo out of Phoenix, Arizona. I've known for a while on the show, and he's got quite the journey on how he went from real estate investor to tech founder. And he is the co-owner of Batch Services, which when did that start?
2018.
You guys were like one of the first people to come out with like skip tracing, which was like the buzzword back then. Didn't you guys just start out skip tracing and then it turned into where it's at now?
Yeah, it was primarily skip tracing. It was really, we were buying data wholesale, selling at retail, just manipulating some of the files,
Yeah.
buying at wholesale, selling at retail. That's how we started. We didn't have a platform at the time. It was really just working with a lot of Excel files and,
Oh my gosh.
selling on Facebook. And that's kind of how we got started.
Selling it on Facebook.
Actually, I had been doing some of this since I think February or March of 2018.
Yeah.
And I had, I don't know, six, seven, eight, maybe 10 people that were just constantly want for me to skip trace data. I had a larger contract with another provider at the time. And it was just like a side hobby for me to pay my costs for some of my marketing efforts in the wholesale and investing business.
Yeah. Before you got into batch, which we're going to cover today, like how did you just get into real estate? Because you started out and you were doing a lot of like flipping and wholesaling with your sister and you partnered with Jesse. And I've known you guys for a while now.
Yeah, so I actually started off as actually I shouldn't say started off as an agent, but I got my agent license in 2007, right when I turned 18. And I knew it immediately I'm not going to be an agent, honestly. I showed one house to a sort of a friend of mine. I showed him two houses and I'm like, "Yeah, I'm done with this thing. I can't be an agent." So then I obviously started looking at other avenues, and one of my friends and his parents were fixing houses. Like, me and him bought a house together. We borrowed 50K and bought a house. Did our first fix and flip, sold it in 2008, right when the market was crashing. And from then on, I just started buying a lot of fix and flips. I was also working in a construction company. Actually, my family owned plumbing, air conditioning, kind of veered into a little bit more construction towards the end. So I had a good background of just, how to remodel houses, all of the ins and outs of just doing a lot of the hard labor. And I was doing a lot of it myself. I would have the kind of my day job as, working in the contracting business. And then, after hours, I go work on these houses. And so I was doing about 3 to 5 houses a year for a couple of years. And then at one point went up to 7 to 10 houses afterwards. But this was all part-time up in 2015, at which point we kind of shut down our contracting company. It just wasn't my cup of tea, honestly. It was more of a family. My dad was working at the time. I was working in the company. Just wasn't passionate about it and went full-time into real estate investing. So I was still buying primarily houses from the MLS at the time. And then I ended up buying a house from a wholesaler, which I didn't know, anything about wholesaling at the time. Ended up buying a house, and I saw the settlement statement there was a $15,000 fee. I'm like, what the hell is this thing? Called the
Yeah.
title company. I'm like, what is this fee for? It's like, well, somebody's basically buying this house, they're reselling it to you, and that's the money that they get. I'm like, huh, that's pretty interesting. So then I started looking into wholesaling. I got into Sean Terry podcast at the time. Went to one of his events, and that's kind of how I got into honestly wholesaling. So late 2015, early 2016 to about 2018 is when we were primarily wholesaling, and really just transitioned. I think honestly we kind of let go of a lot of the fix and flips around 2017 or so. But we had, I've done a couple hundred fix and flips up until this point, and started trying to figure out how to automate a lot of our business, honestly. And I think that's when I met Jesse as well,
Yeah.
partnered with him. And then he's like, well, dude, I'm trying to figure out how to manage all of these lists. And, how do I know which list I've skip traced? How do I know which ones I haven't skip
Yeah.
traced? So I had all these Excel kind of formulas at the time. And it was just really a big management overhead to really try to figure out how do I manage all of this data, because it's just always you're getting data from your lists and it's okay, well, did I even market to this individual in this list? So I ended up building a little bit of a software. It was just for internal use at the time, and then more people started actually wanting to use it because just some friends of friends, and all of a sudden we ended up putting a payment processing behind it to be able to give them the logins and then charge them some money, and that just kind of grew very rapidly. Really a hockey stick growth for us between 2019 and 2022. We really saw some tremendous growth in the software, and we ended up launching a few more services alongside it. So that's, long story short, that's kind of how we got here today. And today we service a lot of investors, agents. We sell data to a lot of home services companies, as well as actually a lot of B2B companies, larger companies, Crexy, True Green,
Those are
landscape.
big clients.
They're very large companies. Quite a lot of them are publicly traded companies that we sell data to. In addition to obviously the platforms we have for the mom and pop type investors and people looking to do their first deal, all the way to some sophisticated investors and operations.
And that's the thing I really like about the tool is you can, if you're brand new, there's a lot of value in it. And if you're super big, you can also use it and be efficient. And it's funny you talked about wholesaling because you're in Phoenix, right? Which is like the guru capital of America. Every real estate guy is in Phoenix, it seems like, or Tampa, Florida, or whatever. So you're doing all this like in a really tough market, and you're finding a way to have an advantage over everybody. And it's funny, your first wholesale deal, you see that HUD, and it's like, what the hell is this fee here? Like, because you probably just thought you were paying whatever for it, which you were, and then you see the guy
Yeah.
wholesale that. I just bought a deal in Washington like 2 weeks ago from a wholesaler, and he made $116,000. Like, he got this house in Gig Harbor for like 180 grand, and I paid him 300. And I'm like, this guy, like, how the hell did he find a deal like that? But maybe he used batch. Who knows?
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe they were on, stacked on some lists. So that's the thing I want to cover. You're able to really build this cool tech tool for many different industries. Obviously, real estate was probably where you guys really started in the beginning, and then you eventually branched into more of these other businesses like solar, et cetera.
Yep.
So if someone is not familiar with batch, like if you had to summarize it, if you had to chat GPT summarize batch, how would you summarize it? And then actually we'll probably pull my screen up, and I'll go in and start, going back and forth for you, because there's a lot of stuff. I've been using the tool for a while, and it's awesome.
Yeah, so I'll kind of cover like there's really like we have three distinct products currently: batch leads, batch data, and then batch dialer. So batch leads is a lead management platform that helps investors, agents identify and source leads for their marketing and like sales needs. So in addition, the platform basically provides all the information for virtually every homeowner in the country. We have about 65 million phone numbers, about 260 million emails that you have access to, all in basically in a subscription kind of a package.
And that was crazy. When you guys did that feature, like, I was like, holy shit, they're giving everyone's phone number, and there's like 5 phone numbers with every person. Plus, it's crazy how much you guys are giving away.
Yeah, so I mean, like data commoditization is a real thing. Obviously, you see kind of a lot of stuff that's going on with like Chat GPT, launching at a certain price, and now obviously a lot of stuff is given away for free. The reality is like data gets cheaper over time, and that's what happened with skip tracing. You mentioned kind of back in the day, 2018, 17, 18. Actually, right before that, like 2015, I remember paying like $1 per skip trace in 2015. So like, data costs go down significantly, over time. So that's just, a fact of life. So the other platform is AI Dialer that helps agents and investors, and other companies, really like solar companies, other like home services based companies as well, operationalize the data with a multi-line dialer that has like spam and scam likely reputation that's built into it to help you connect to more individuals and connect better with actual homeowners. And the third one is, which I mentioned earlier, is really the batch data side, which is more of a B2B offering for us. It provides property and homeowner contact data at scale. So a lot of the same data that's available in batch leads, plus more data, because we've only exposed in batch leads roughly about 25-30% of the actual data that we have, just not to overwhelm the actual user and the user experience. Companies are able to utilize this data at scale via APIs, bulk data deliveries and like data streams and just more sophisticated methods. So if you say, hey, I want all the data that you have available for, King County as an example, we can give it to you, or we can put it inside of your database, give it to you in a Google Drive if you wanted to, or have you access via our APIs. And like I mentioned, that platform is primarily used by larger institutions.
Yeah, that is interesting. The thing I like about your platform too, that, as I've gotten to, use it more, like, let's say you're brand new and you don't have a big budget. Let's say your budget's like $500 a month. I would tell someone, get a batch subscription. You're going to have all the phone numbers included, and you go out, and we can even do this in a minute, but go out and find the most targeted sellers by using these filters, and you already have their phone numbers. So you can essentially have a $500 a month budget and get a deal, if not more, because you can use the power of that platform to get going in the business. You don't need to spend $5,000 a month on mail. You don't need to start running PPC, because a lot of these guys, they can't afford that. They can't just start throwing $5,000 a month in like a market like Phoenix and get a deal right away. But they can use a tool like Batch, where you can find all the vacant pre-foreclosures that are out of state owned and literally call them for free. And they could even use their cell phone if they don't even want to pay for the dialer. So it's like, that didn't exist when I got started and when you got started. You had to, go to the county. Like, there was no tech really in 2015 when I started. Like,
no, there wasn't, like at the time. That's part of what drove the need for us to really create our own product for internal use. We were using, I think I counted at one point really roughly about 22 different platforms to be able to really, operationalize our business. It was insane. And it was like, I had connected some of those platforms with, things like, Zapier, and then it's like, it goes into the system. There's a voicemail, a Gmail transcribes it, it sends it to this other system. And everything was just really like finicky like system or setup that was very prone to like breaking. And then so I found a lot of my time just working with a lot of these systems. Whereas today, fast forward to today, part of our goal was to really make everything just so easy for the investor to the point where, and it's not even really like list stacking, it's something you used to do like 2-3 years ago.
Yeah.
Today we've actually implemented some like machine learning like features to where, and I can kind of speak to you a little bit more about that as well, to where you can just basically like select the location, drag the dial to the most likely properties to sell, and all of a sudden you have a list of X amount of properties depending on the geography that you're looking at that
Yeah.
are most likely to sell. You have their phone numbers, so the only thing that you have to do is really just pick up the phone, or
Yeah.
obviously you can operationalize it via direct mail and other means, but it's extremely easy. And it's
It's
people
crazy.
that are doing it are successful, and there's people that will find a million excuses.
Exactly. It's like you have all the tools at your fingertips, just you got to execute. And I always say, like, back in the day, it was harder to do it because there was less technology, but there was not as many competition. Now it's like there's a lot of technology and a lot more competition. So it's like the same shit. You just like if you drove for dollars in 2015, like to get the owner's phone number would be a giant hassle. White
Almost
pages.
impossible. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So now it's like, even if the seller's getting all these calls, like that doesn't matter. Like if you're cool on the phone and you know what you're doing and you can actually like, separate yourself and stand out from
Yep.
a sales standpoint, like who gives a shit if they're getting all these calls? I mean, that's just the new real estate. So I want to share my screen and actually go into this tool because I feel like
Sure.
for all the people on YouTube, like they can learn by really seeing it. So first thing I like about this is that, the UI is very simple. It's very intuitive. I like everything on the left here. So let's say, for example, we're in my area in Seattle, which is King County, Washington. So this would be, I guess, the list builder, right?
Yeah, this is the map view of you're building a list from here as far as what properties you want to target though. I want to say something though. You are actually can you click the off market button?
Yes. Yeah. What is this? You just explained it, but I probably don't even use this to the best of its ability. So if I click this, looks like there's a little toggle here, what I can do.
Yeah, so I can explain how this works. So if you want to drag it over to the right for the most likely to sell. So this is really looking at properties that are most likely to sell based on roughly about we're monitoring about 1,000 or so attributes, and it's a machine learning algorithm that's trained both in supervised and unsupervised learning models. So what you're really doing right now is like, hey, like you type in King County, Washington, and you just, although like I mentioned earlier, it's really a one button, 2-3 button clicks, I would say, to get to the most likely properties to sell. And this is without putting in any other parameters, really. So
Yeah.
you're saying like these 7,047 properties are most likely to sell in King County based on a machine learning algorithm. And I can speak to a lot about this because I was just talking to some larger data company that had like some like data scientists on their team, just analyzing our machine learning model. And really, like, we're able to predict which properties are most likely to sell based on historical patterns and historical behavior. So we're looking at things such as obviously all of the distress signals like pre-foreclosure, vacant properties, out-of-state owners, and what there's a combination of all of these. And what factor would you assign to a property? Let's say it's vacant, it's an out-of-state owner, and it's a pre-foreclosure. And by the way, we're also looking at the demographics of that individual. Maybe they are an elderly person. Maybe they have like kids that are 18 and over, as an example.
Yeah.
So you're looking at all of these factors, and machine learning algorithm would helps you predict which properties are most likely to sell based on historical behavior. So when we initially set out to train these machine learning and AI platform was really like about almost 12 months ago, I think like March or April last year. And it was based on a supervised machine learning model where we basically assign all of these variables that we think are most likely going to lead to a property being sold. And
Yeah.
then the system basically starts looking at other properties that have a lot of these same characteristics and starts assigning weights to the different variables. So now all of a sudden you can also turn the coin around and say, okay, well, now that you know these variables and what led to these properties being sold in this like 3 month span nationwide. By the way, so you're looking at a large data sample.
Yeah. Hundreds of millions.
Find me all of the properties that are going to mimic this behavior in the next 6 months. So
Like
whenever
a
we see
lookalike audience almost.
it's a lookalike audience. Well, it's really like it's a machine learning AI algorithm that is able to predict which properties are most likely to sell. Now, on top of this, you can start stacking. If you go to the open filters over there, and you can say, okay, so you open the property characteristics, and you can select, single family residential, and maybe you're only focusing on properties that are, let's say, no more than, let's say, $1 million. I don't know. Let's see your
Oh yeah, that's true. That's what I don't really screw around with like the mansions in Bellevue. So that's
yeah.
actually
Yeah, so for instance, like an estimated value of the properties that's more than $1 million. So now if you click, yes, see the 9,000 properties, it'll actually narrow it down. It's going to reduce that count from
Oh
7,000
yeah,
to
yeah. No, I got
3,000.
this is good because these are single families, condos, or townhouses under $1 million like value. So this is like really what I would actually buy anyways.
Yeah, so and then you can continue adding like additional filters. Like you can say like, give me, that have maybe a loan, an equity, maybe 50% equity or 75% equity, whatever filters you want to apply on top of that. It's going to further constrain that, pool of properties, available properties. And really, you're left with, let's see how much, 3,300 properties that are most likely to sell in this region. So now this is obviously, it's a big county. I don't know actually how many, on top of my head, how many properties there are in King County. Yeah, you can narrow it down even further. So it went from 1 million down to like 3,300 properties. You can see how powerful this is now. If you're looking at a zip code or like a city as an example, you would narrow it down even further, and really you're going to be left with couple hundred properties. So if you're doing this, like let's say like you have a daytime, part-time job, and you're really doing this as I wouldn't say a hobby, sorry,
Side
but
hustle.
like a side hustle, from let's say 5 to 8, and you got 3 hours to call individuals or people or homeowners, you can narrow this list down significantly to the point where you're only calling the most likely to sell. Let's say top 50, top 75, top 100 people. So you can curate a list based on your daily, weekly, monthly calling activity, and really go through everybody that's most likely to sell in that geography in a matter of days or weeks.
Yeah, and even this too, like what I would do if I got into the weeds is I would probably remove like just bought the house within the last like 2 years. I would probably scrap that. And then I would get this even tighter. So now it's like people who've owned their house for at least a few years and
Yep.
they're highly likely to sell. And they're like, you can make this house. And this is a big area. Like if you were in like a smaller town, it would obviously be a lot
Yeah,
smaller.
if you go to the old filters, there's a lot of like kind of quick filters that you can apply on it. Like just to go to the very top section, yeah, with a quick.
Oh, yeah, yeah. I like this. Yeah, prop vacant. Let's try that.
Now there's 25 properties that are vacant that are highly likely to sell, basically.
I would go after these first.
And
Yeah.
these algorithms, just like any obviously AI system, is never going to be 100% perfect, but it's a very strong indication that these properties are going to sell. And we've compared these. I feel very confident saying that ours is the best, if not the very one of the best, if not the best machine learning algorithm out there, because we do have a lot of data. So we've really compiled data, which we use the Databricks as a data platform for those of you that are more like techie. We have data going back to like early 1900. There's transactions and properties that are recorded. Obviously, there's consumer demographics data. As far as we have, about 400 different attributes for the homeowner and the consumer themselves. What magazines they subscribe to, what credit ranges and so forth. So we're able to look at a lot of these algorithms, just plug it into the system, and really like control the output and the variables as far as how this machine learning algorithm works. And it's been like working out tremendously. It's given a lot of value to individuals to the point where like you don't really have to really even learn even everything else that this platform offers. You can just type in your location, drag it all the way, use the batch rank AI, and you can be in business in 20 minutes.
Yeah, or even if you have a team, this could be one of your lists you go after because it's I had a question for you about that because there's historically been like straight up list providers. Obviously, they'll go unnamed for confidentiality, but they're 15, 20, $25,000 a year to get a license for these lists that are basically like predictive lists. And I've bought them and I've mailed them and we've done fairly okay. Like we didn't crush it, but we obviously made our money back. But I'm thinking now, I'm like, why would I pay 20,000 a year when I could get the same thing for batch for the subscription fee? And it's basically the same thing. I feel like now people can get those quality leads that people are paying, like me 20,000 a year for the cost of a subscription, which is much less than that, right?
And I'll tell you, like I know a lot of the companies that you like, a few of the companies that
Yeah, we talk about it offline.
and we've actually like for some of this, like there's a large real estate based company. We do about I want to say about, last I heard, is about 700 deals annually. We actually did a fairly large study based on some of the data that they were getting from some of these other companies. And we basically ended up like our algorithm ended up eliminating about something in the tune of like 55 or 57% false positives, basically, where properties that they predict are going to sell. We basically ran our algorithm on top of their data, which is obviously like favoring their data in the first place. And we ended up eliminating about 56, 57% of the properties that they said are more likely to sell. We basically said, no, these properties are not selling because of these reasons. And it could have been like reasons for like, hey, these properties just sold, just 7, 8 months ago. but it's a lot of the same algorithms, and we're just making it, again, we're trying to be ahead of the curve when it comes to technology and costs, and really just offering a product to the individual and the investor that it to help them be successful in real estate investing. Because like I mentioned, if we don't do it, somebody else will in the future. And the way I've seen like a lot of these data costs go down like slow over the years, like you mentioned, the skip tracing. For those of you that are paying attention to a lot of the what's happening with Chat GPTs and Gemini's and the DeepSeek now, the costs are basically at a free fall. For a lot of these platforms. So this usually happens to technology. It happened to, a lot of the storages, megabytes and gigabytes at the time of storage you have, and all this, everybody was charging for it. Now you can get it virtually free.
From Dropbox, it's like $2 a month. You got enough data for your whole life.
So we basically did the same thing for a lot of these machine learning algorithms. And, as a company, we luckily have the scale to be able to do that and offer it. But yeah, that's primarily the reason why we decided to just make it basically virtually free.
Yeah, no, I love it. And I love how it adds so much value, because even if you're not brand new, like a lot of guys like that are doing a lot of business are very busy with other things. So like marketing is one of the buckets that they have to figure out, but they don't have a lot of time. So instead of having like 10 different platforms, they could just get a batch subscription and get all their lists inside a batch, right? And then they can go into multiple markets. Let's say they want to test out Tennessee and they live in Florida. You just go in batch and you pull a list in Tennessee. It's not like you have to get a different license in a different state. It's like all in one. And that's something I really see. There's so much utility in that. I had another question. Now, this is the list builder feature, right? And this is something I use a lot. We send this to our callers. We get deals from this. And then another thing too is this is already skip trace. So I download the file. It's already got the freaking phone numbers. I just give it right to the call center and that's it. Done.
Yeah, we removed the whole concept of skip tracing when we ended up releasing some of these new features 4 or 5 months ago.
Like skip tracing is just part of a subscription.
Yeah, as long as you have the property saved in your profile, phone numbers just come included. So there's no concept of skip tracing anymore.
That's awesome. I'm going to do a property that I own. 305 Meadow. I'll own like one of my rental properties. Heights Drive. Let's see. All right. So this is a rental I bought last year.
Yeah, I remember you buying properties in New York at the time.
Yeah, I still do a lot. Yeah, look at this. My address, the LLC I bought it in. So now I'm going to save this. So if I save that now, this is our landline back home. This is the family landline. So they could call because this number is tied right to this. And this is literally my email address, which is crazy. If this is a valid email address, then this is my personal one. So it's crazy how you could just go in here and and this is a property that I own an LLC. So let's say I owned it individually, there'd probably be more numbers. So
yeah, usually with LLCs historically, I mean, traditionally actually LLCs are harder to find, especially trusts are even harder to find. I mean, just trusts are meant to be anonymous. So sometimes when you own properties under an LLC, if the mailing address is connected to your personal name, that's how we can kind of pierce that.
Yeah, you got it right on the money.
So that's how you can kind of pierce the corporate veil. Obviously, you get better results if properties are owned by individuals.
That's awesome. And that's another thing I like about Batch. You could just take an address and look it up. Let's say you find a beater house down the street. You're like, oh, who owns that? You literally type it into Batch like a Google search, and you can get all the information you need. So we got the details, obviously the ownership. Now, how do you guys get these comparable? Because a lot of people are spending their whole day on Zillow, and half the information on Zillow isn't accurate. So it looks like this is MLS data, if I'm not mistaken, because they're sold, active, and pending here.
Yeah, there is MLS data. We have virtually all of the listing and MLS data in the nation. I would say we have about 98% of all active listings nationwide.
Wow, that's incredible.
We have about 1.1 billion images that you have access to. And again, images help with the comparables. I mean, if you don't have proper images, it's hard for you to do a proper comparable. You don't know what you're looking at, the condition of the property and so forth. But yes, we do have, you have access to, nationwide MLS basically.
Yeah. Oh, this is crazy. I'm looking at comps for my house.
Yeah, you can do comps. And yeah, if you actually go to an active property, we've curated it's not an active property, but
look at a listed property. Yeah,
we do have actually an ARV calculation that we curate by ourselves. So what we end up doing basically is a lot of the same things that you do when doing a manual comparable. What we end up doing for all active properties is because we have the filter, yeah, exactly, on market. And if you go to the deal potential over there, you can find on market deals that are listed below, X% below. Yeah, go there. So that are listed, X% below the actual ARV of the property. So we end up curating the ARVs. It drives let's say 70% or something. So if you click on one of these properties, so this property is, let's say, active for
whoa, that seems cheap. I might have to look into that after this podcast.
Well, see, that's what it is though. So if you go back to this property, Greg, so it says the after repair value for this property is estimated to be 480. That's why this property showed up like on the deal finder, because
Yeah.
now you're looking at, show me properties that are, I didn't see the actual percentage, but you're really looking at properties that are that the ARV is, let's say, twice as much as the listed price.
Yeah.
Uh,
That's
and you
interesting.
can find there's a lot of people that are doing the agent outreach methodologies, deal finding, are using
Yeah.
this feature to find properties that are really below their potential.
Look at that. I learn something new every day. This is a perfect example, man. I know this area super well. Yeah, 90 grand for a property in Newburgh, even though it looks like a haunted house. I mean, it's worth big money on the back end. Look at that. And that's probably exactly what it's worth because I do a lot of deals here anyway.
So yeah, there's a lot of cool features. I mean, again, like we have a kind of features for people if they want the driving for dollars. I don't know if you've seen the driving for dollars kind of features. It connects to your mobile apps. This is the driving routes actually. So you can actually drag it. You can start like a virtual driving route. You can drive for dollars. You can add properties from here. It'll sync with your actual mobile phone. So if you're actually physically driving, it'll actually sync to here to tell you where you've been and what properties you've added.
Yeah, look at that. You click the address and then you can save it. Oh, that's sick. Because you could have a VA do this all day. You could say drop them in a neighborhood. And, let's say they're in Phoenix, there's like, hundreds of houses in these subdivisions. You can just sit there all day and definitely get deals that way.
Yeah, you can also do it on a view like a satellite view, because satellite view images are typically, updated more frequently than the actual street view images. There's a lot of tools that you have access to be able to really help you acquire deals and get properties. And our goal is to try to make it very easy and just intuitive. We did a big redesign on the platform for the actual property search 9 months ago, 10 months ago, and the goal was to really make it easy and
Yeah,
more intuitive
it
for
is.
individuals to obtain deals. And yeah.
That's awesome. I didn't even know that because we've bought deals on the MLS, but it was always like out of our ass. Like someone would call us and I'd be like, all right, whatever. But like I could have someone go in there every day. It's like there's just so many ways now with the information you guys provide where you can get like the advantage over people. Because I was talking with my friend who's a big flipper in Long Island, and he was like, "Yeah, nowadays, man, it's a game of inches. Like everyone's doing the same thing, but like it's how do you have that little advantage over your competitor? And like if you're really good at using batch, like whether you're new or experienced, you can get these deals every month that other people aren't willing to get. So." What's the future like for batch? I mean, you guys have evolved many times over the last, you guys have been in business for like 7 years now. Like what's the future look like? Because you guys have just done so much great thing in this industry, and it hasn't even been 10 years yet.
Yeah, good question. We consistently try to figure out what the next 3 to 5 years looks like, even the next 3 years will look like, because in light of a lot of the AI tools and platforms and AI algorithms and systems that have been like rolling out by a lot of the big tech companies, it just seems like things change much more rapidly. So like we've actually shortened, like historically we used to plan things about a year ahead in the past, and really now it's like over the past like 12 months it's really been, we plan a quarter at a time.
Yeah.
But it's really hard to estimate for us to like prolong this, because it's hard to know what are the new set of AI features and tools that are going to be rolling out by Google, chat GPTs as well, that are going to enable and streamline a lot of our processes to the point where we can enable our users to be more successful. And just because we don't have I think even a lot of the big tech companies don't oftentimes know how things are going to be in 6 months from now. It's been hard for us we've had challenges, I would say, for us to figure out, what the next, like I said, 3 years looks like. So what we're focusing right now is heavily on machine learning and AI, and figuring out how we enable more insights for users, more streamlined workflows, and
Yeah.
really to enable the system to do the work for the actual investor as much as possible based on the agent's buying criteria. So one of the things that we're actually working on internally now is we've done a tremendous job of just solving the need for getting the actual leads that investors need, the off-market leads and deal opportunities. One of the things that we're working on, among other things, is the ability to have like this reverse buy box. So we're leveraging AI systems and machine learning algorithms to be able to predict, who's most likely to buy this deal. And historically, how this has worked, obviously, you get cash buyer lists and these like large lists. The problem is a lot of these lists are very stationary, so we don't oftentimes know a lot of the information for these individuals. But it's either a buying activity kind of changed from 3 months ago, even 6 months ago. So we're kind of working on right now is really trying to enable and streamline the workflows. So this workflow that I'm talking about is really the whole, we don't even have an internal name for it, but I'm calling it just the reverse buy box. So you have a subject property. And instead of like, obviously, you can always do your comparables, but we're going to obviously automate this for comparables nationwide, what the actual exit price, could be and should be. But also identifying the top, 1%, and it could be the top, 3, top 10, top 20 potential buyers that are going to buy this property based on the most recent buying activity of all of these individuals, entities, and buyers. So what we've actually ended up working the past 6 months is to be able to enable us to do that is we've cataloged every single transaction in the country that happens to the best of our ability. Really like create a parent-child relationships for entities so that, for instance, I as an individual have, I don't know, I think I have like 30 different LLCs. They all kind of funnel to like 2 or 3 LLCs, like my S Corp as an example.
Yeah, like a I have like a holding company that owns all my rental LLCs.
So we were trying to establish again, the whole parent-child relationship to the holding company, because when we look at, Greg's, XYZ LLC, and maybe that's the child entity, but then you have the parent entity is, ABC LLC.
Exactly.
So now we say, okay, so Greg owns this ABC LLC, and then we can see that he's bought, several properties under different entities, and we know exactly, how he's buying properties, what properties he's buying, how he's financing them, the equity that he has in them, and everything else that goes along with the actual transaction details. And, we can see that, let's say Greg's been very active the past 3 months, and he started buying in these zip codes and stopped buying in these zip codes. So now all of a sudden we have a subject property, and we're able to predict and give the user really the top 3, 5, 10 buyers that are most likely to buy this property based on all of this data that I just mentioned. And by the way, we're going to give you the phone number and
that's huge, man. Yeah, I'd be interested to see whenever you get that rolled out. I want to check it out because I bet you if you went into my territory in New York, where I grew up, where we do most of our deals, my entity and all my buddies, we'd be all over the place. And then it'd be like, oh, these are the entities. And then it'd be like, oh, that's me, that's Matt, that's Devin, that's Nick. And then it's like, because I've had a lot of people like see that I bought property, and I get all these cold calls from people now because they see like, oh, I own XYZ. And, because it's just like easy to find that. But that gives the people a big advantage because, like, these people, I don't know how to buy, or I don't. It's like if you just go in batch, you get the sellers, you get the buyers. You just understand how to master that platform. You could do some damage, and you could have a big advantage too because you keep your costs down because you're not spending, big money every month. The cost of subscription, some time, and you can scale it accordingly. So, man, I'm excited to see what you guys build out, man. You built something great. It's helping so many people, thousands and thousands of people. And listen, if people want to check out Batch, what's the best way for them to do that?
Batchleads.io.
Awesome. And then if people want to check you out, you got an Instagram, Facebook, if they want to follow you and see what you're up to?
Yeah, I used to. I should have done.
Get it down. The guy's all in.
I still have it. I'm just not active on it. But email's fine. Ivo at batchservice.com. If anybody wants to actually get a hold of me, ask any data related questions, happy to kind of help the community out.
Awesome. Well, Ivo, we'll put that in there. We'll put batchservice.io or batchleads.io.
It's Ivo at batchservice.com.
Ivo at batchservice.com. And then the website, though, was batchleads.
Batchleads.io. Yep.
We'll have that in there, man. I appreciate you being a guest. That was a fun one.
Awesome. Thank you, Greg.